Last Corla. The first thing I'd say about this bill is there seems to be a broad consensus that something needs to be done. I'm hearing from Sinn Féin that they'll be indicating or that they'll be supporting this bill on the passage through the House. I understand that there's a difference in the approach that the Sinn Féin would take over the government parties. I happen to disagree with the Sinn Féin approach. I think it's too close to the Tory model. I do think it will result in a huge wealth transfer to people who least need it, energy companies included. But put that to one side, everybody in the House does agree on one thing, and that is that people living through this cost of energy crisis absolutely need help, and they absolutely need help urgently. And that is something that this bill provides. I think the provisions put forward in the bill are reasonably straightforward. They've been rehearsed already when the previous energy credit was put in place. There have been deficiencies identified in the previous iteration of the electricity credit, which I hope will put to rights in this. I suppose the specific instance of travellers where members of the travelling community, where there might be one MPRN across a number of families, that fails a basic equity test if each of those families isn't getting what they're entitled to in terms of the energy credit. Similarly, the situation if the energy bill was in the name of a landlord and that benefit wasn't being passed on to the tenant, that fails an equity test. That's not something that we should be standing over as a government, and I do very much hope that we've set the provisions in place that are going to prevent that happening again. I think the changes in the NORA levy, I think to offset the carbon tax increase, I think that was a good idea. I support that notion. As the Minister has said, there's sufficient energy supply already there in terms of the NORA levy, so I think that was wise to do. But I want to just kind of broaden out the scope of my contribution. And thinking about this, I was thinking there's 4 basic objectives that as a consumer, as a customer and as a policymaker, I want to be considering about energy. So first of all, I want to reduce my energy costs. Everybody wants to reduce their energy costs. Hand in hand with that, I want to reduce my energy usage, and I want to figure out when is the best time for me to use the energy that I'm going to use in terms of price, but also that third element. And I do think people want to play their part in terms of mitigating the energy crisis, and particularly the supply in electricity. So I do want to know when to use my energy in a way that's going to help relieve the stress that's on the system that we all know is there. And I do think people have that broader sense of civic duty. And the fourth element is I want to promote microgeneration of renewables so that actually energy is putting money back into people's pockets. But I get the sense that my 4 priorities may not be priorities that are shared by our energy companies. That in fact we may be at cross purposes. It may be the case that what the energy companies want me to do is not reduce my usage, not reduce my bills, not promote microgeneration. Presumably they would like to see less pressure on the grid, however. What could I say in support of this? Well, firstly, on microgeneration tariffs and payments, I had a look today before making this speech. Bord Gas has no published tariffs for microgeneration, and if I make any errors here, last Corla, I'll be happy to correct the record after. No published tariff, and you can expect payment once per year. Prepay power, I've no information that I could find online re-rates or payment frequency. SSE electricity, 14 cents per kilowatt hour, I can expect 2 payments per year. I could go further in this, but there's a variation in terms of the price that's been offered per kilowatt hour. And I don't think really paying somebody once a year or twice yearly is acceptable. I don't think it's the carrot that we need to promote microgeneration. And I can tell you from talking to constituents who have installed solar panels on their roofs that it is not easy to get that feed-in tariff. There are obstacles and hurdles being put in people's way, and they're finding it difficult to access that payment. Energy companies are dragging their heels on it. And similarly, I actually had a smart meter installed in my own house just recently. And I was expecting the world of information to open in front of me for me to be able to figure out when I should use my energy, how I'm going to save my money. But I have no access to that information. The only way currently I can access that information is if I sign up for a smart meter tariff. Now, I currently don't have the information to know that I'll do better on a smart meter tariff. Somebody, Lascian Corla, has that information, and you can be sure that they're using it for their corporate benefit. But I don't have access to that information. So how am I to know what plan is going to benefit me most? And the other thing that I would say is I got a research note prepared, and the line that I have here, the number of tariff options out there could be described as baffling. And that's from a Green Party researcher. And there was a similar discussion in my local membership WhatsApp group, where members of the Green Party were trying to compare and contrast and understand the different tariffs that were out there for people who had smart meters. And we couldn't make head nor tail of it. Now, that's people who are very literate in terms of energy policy. If I can't make head nor tail of it, how would I expect somebody, perhaps of a low literacy level, to be able to understand when they don't have access to information and the information that they have is difficult to decipher? So Deputy Whitmore rightly pointed out there's a 1.7 billion wealth transfer of taxpayer money, and Deputy Barry was correct, I think, that ultimately that consumers will benefit from it, but eventually that wealth transfer will end up at the energy companies. And I wonder, Minister, should we be looking at conditionality? Should these tariffs be easily comprehensible to people? Should we make sure that people have access to the information that their smart meters are generating? And should we make sure that energy companies are not putting hurdles in the way of people who want to benefit from microgeneration on their homes?